You're lying in a room that's mostly dark now, just the whisper of lamplight flickering off a cracked stone wall. The fire has nearly gone out, though it was never especially brave to begin with. You can hear the faint shuffle of rats in the corner. Not alarming, just present. As they always were. You're not in your room, not exactly, not tonight. Tonight you're in a place very far away, and very long ago. Somewhere between a draughty chapel and a suspiciously silent courtyard, you find yourself stepping softly through time. Your shoes are not yours. They're a little tight, a little damp, and you're fairly certain they were once a goat. You can feel the uneven floor beneath you. Dirt, then stone, then a loose scatter of straw someone swore was clean. It smells faintly of firewood, old apples, and something that might once have been cheese, but now is more philosophical than edible. Welcome to the Middle Ages. You're here to learn a few things, but not loudly, not urgently, just eventually. Before we drift any further, take a deep breath, then another, slowly, gently. And if this kind of wandering through dusty corners of forgotten history helps your mind settle, perhaps consider subscribing. Maybe even leave a little comment about where in the world or what century you're listening from. You never know who else might be listening with you. A knight, a cook, a former eyebrow. Yes, eyebrows. They were once optional. You see, beauty in the medieval world was less about what you were born with, and more about what you were willing to painfully remove. Eyebrows, for instance, were considered deeply suspicious. The well-bred forehead was meant to be large, luminous, and completely unbothered by hair, so out came the tweezers, or the cloth soaked in vinegar and something unsettling. And then, pluck and pluck, until your entire expression looked like you were constantly surprised by your own mortality. And that was just the beginning. Pale skin, the colour of moonlight and minor scurvy was all the rage, not because it was lovely, but because it meant you didn't work, or sweat, or really do anything remotely useful. The less sun you had seen, the more elite you were assumed to be. A face like cold parchment said, "I have servants, and none of them know my name." To achieve this look, one might dab on white lead. Yes, lead, as in the slow poetic poison that made your cheeks glow, and then, in time, flake off like the petals of a rather terminal flower. Add a touch of egg white for shine, a dash of crushed pearl if your budget allowed, and a little blue paint for the veins, because nothing says aristocrat like pretending you're an anatomical diagram. You look around now, you see faces in the candlelight, smooth, ghostly, concerned, not with politics or morality, but with the placement of their hairline, because foreheads, those noble domes of wisdom used as status symbols, entire inches of hair were sacrificed in pursuit of a higher brow. Some women went so far back, their scalp began to forget it had a job. From the eyes upward it was a vast and holy prairie. If you had a 5 head you were a philosopher, if you had a 6 head you were a queen. You hear a cough, sharp, then swallowed quickly. No one wants to be remembered for dying inconveniently, but the truth is people did die for beauty, not metaphorically, literally, slowly, in powdered layers. It was the kind of quiet suffering you didn't speak about, mostly because it hurt to move your lips under the lead. Still, they persisted, because beauty was never just beauty. It was class, it was virtue, it was survival. You step past a wooden door that groans a little, like it remembers being a tree and regrets its choices. Inside is a woman brushing her hair. Long, blonde, expensive. Not naturally so. She's used saffron, honey, and the occasional mysterious yellow tincture to achieve that divine glow. Her hair smells like a bakery, but she's not allowed to show it, because she's married, and once married, hair becomes a moral hazard. So she wraps it, in veils, in nets, in linen hoods that could double as soup strainers. Her hair is now protected from wind, judgment, and flirtation. She sighs, quietly. It's not sadness exactly, just ritual. You feel the floor again, dusty, slightly sticky. You think of the modern world with its contour palettes and hyaluronic serums, and you wonder if we've changed, or just changed the tools. Outside, the moon has risen over crooked rooftops and chimneys that lean like tired shoulders. The stars are soft, not twinkling, just watching. In this age, A smile is dangerous. Most people keep their lips sealed. Teeth, if you had them, were best kept secret. Not because of modesty, but because toothpaste hadn't been invented yet, and dinner was chewy. A good smile was a private treasure. A decent breath was a miracle, so they chewed cloves, or parsley, or simply stood downwind. Someone passes by you now. You don't know their name, but you can tell they're someone important by the number of layers they're wearing. Linen, then wool, then fur, then something decorative and vaguely damp. Their shoes are pointed, comically so, almost dangerous. The toes curve upward like ambition. Their perfume is something floral, mixed with something medieval. You follow slowly, past the bakery that opens before dawn, past the chapel where someone is weeping quietly into folded hands, past the merchant's cart where a rat is making off with something it shouldn't, past beauty and its price, past modesty and its veil, and deeper, into the silence of another century. The wind picks up. You pull your cloak closer. You don't remember having a cloak, but it fits, like the story you're now in. Close your eyes, if they're not already. You're safe here. You're not expected to remember dates or kings, just moments, smells, sounds, the sound of time breathing very softly, very far away. You're standing at the edge of a garden now, but not the pleasant kind. No roses, no fountains, just damp soil and a few struggling herbs, mostly medicinal and mostly resentful. The sky's a slow-moving blanket of grey. Somewhere nearby someone is chanting, not happily, but rhythmically. This is a convent, or what once was, or what tries to be. You're not expected to kneel or pray, but you might want to lower your eyes, just in case a nun decides your ankles are getting ideas. The air smells of lavender, vinegar, and regret. It's clean in a way, but not sterile. Nothing in this time is. A girl passes you, maybe 17, maybe younger. It's hard to tell. Time has been folding her like parchment. Her face is pale as required, but her cheeks are softly pink like she's just been told something both scandalous and holy. There's no makeup on her, of course not, that would be vain. But there is beetroot, and possibly a crushed insect or two. You see, to appear naturally flushed was considered moral. It suggested you were alive, modest, and just maybe fertile. But it had to look accidental, like a blush brought on by a poorly timed poem or a slight brush of fingertips. Too much rouge, and you might be mistaken for a courtesan, or worse, French. So the trick was subtlety. You applied your colour in secret. A mirror, if you had one, was usually cracked or stolen, and your fingers still smelled like stew, but somehow you made do, because you had to. You walk on, your feet crunching softly over straw that was laid out to absorb something. No one talks about what. Down the corridor, you hear two voices whispering about a woman. Not someone they know, someone they heard of, a noble woman who dared to let a lock of hair escape her veil at the harvest fair. And it was blonde, or close enough. Now everyone's whispering. Blonde hair wasn't just fashion, it was spiritual branding. The Virgin Mary, inexplicably blonde in almost every medieval painting despite geography and common sense, set the tone. If you were blonde, you were good, holy, desired, and if you weren't, well, that could be corrected. Saffron, lye, ash, sometimes urine. It depended on the recipe, and on your ability to tolerate the smell of divine virtue boiling slowly in a pot beside your bed. The result? Sometimes glorious, sometimes orange. But effort was half the miracle. You step into the dormitory. The room is lined with narrow beds, each more lumpy than the last. A few soft snores, a rustle of cloth, a faint lingering scent of lavender sachets and damp feet. A woman is brushing her hair in the dark. She isn't supposed to, but she is, carefully, lovingly, as if remembering something, or someone. The brush catches. She winces, then smooths the strand and starts again. You wonder who taught her that motion, and why it makes your chest feel oddly warm. Outside, bells toll. Not for you, but you walk anyway. Through the garden again, past the herbs, past the grave of a mouse with a name someone whispered into the earth, past a bench that's never quite dry, and into the city, slowly. It's still early. The streets are quiet, but not empty. You see the baker elbow deep in dough. He doesn't notice you, which is good, because your shoes are still a bit suspicious. Down an alley a man is trimming his beard, not for vanity, for politics. You see, even men had standards. A beard could say many things. I'm wise, I'm noble, I haven't been chased by rats lately. But it couldn't say, I work. That was vulgar. Manual labour was for people with tanned skin and functional backs. Beauty, even male beauty, was about appearing capable, but untouched. So he grooms, he powders, he maybe even curls a little, just the ends, just enough. In a shop window, if you could call it that, you see a gown, cinched tightly at the waist, empire style, designed to suggest delicacy, not digestion. A body that is willowy, fragile, perhaps freshly recovered from something poetic. In this world, thin was good, but too thin was alarming. You wanted to look like you ate rose petals and whispered Latin, not like you had the plague. Again. A few soft steps and you're near a courtyard. There's a group gathered, quietly watching two women walk past. Their nobility. You can tell by their sleeves, their hoods, the fact that their shoes have never met real dirt. They don't smile. No one does. A smile was too revealing. Teeth were unreliable. So instead, they tilt their heads, lower their lashes, say everything by saying nothing. It's elegant and a little sad, but that's fashion. You drift behind them. Their perfume is faint, something like clove and forgotten linen. You imagine them at a feast, laughing silently, hoping no one notices the flake of lead powder on their collarbone. The wind rises. You clutch your cloak again surprised that it exists, and step toward a chapel. It smells of wax, old stone, something like reverence, and something like mildew. In the corner you spot a statue of a woman, smooth-faced, browless, haloed in a way that feels less divine and more designed. You sit, you don't know why. Maybe to rest, maybe because it's quiet, or maybe because even now you feel it. That long ache of beauty, its reach, its cost, its strange, persistent power. Outside, somewhere, a boy is reciting a poem, terribly, but with heart. A dog barks once, then changes its mind. You lean back against cold stone. The echo of footsteps becomes your lullaby. The smell of soot and saffron becomes your incense. And for a moment you are no longer watching history, you are inside it, still, software, and slowly forgetting where you began. You're standing now at the edge of something. Not quite a town, not quite a battlefield, but somewhere in between. The ground is uneven beneath your feet, hardened by old wheels and older winters. There's a slight breeze, the kind that carries secrets from one hut to another. Your hands are wrapped in soft wool, or something pretending to be wool. You can't be sure. It's scratchy, honest, worn, the way most things are in this world. It is early, or late. The sky doesn't know what it wants, neither do you. But that's fine. There's nothing here that requires certainty. You hear metal, not clashing, not yet. Just a soft jangle, of chain, perhaps, or pride. You follow the sound until it becomes a shape, a woman on horseback, not large, not loud, just there. Quiet power, wrapped in armour that doesn't sparkle but somehow commands all the light anyway. She does not look at you, but she sees you. Her hair is bound tightly, her eyes are bound tighter, not by cloth, by history. She's not rare, not really. You've just been told she is. She's one of the many, the warrior women who refused to stay where they were placed, who picked up swords, or spears, or sometimes just fury, and walked into history with it held high above their heads. Her name? It doesn't matter, or it does. But you won't hear it here. You'll feel it instead. Every time your breath catches at the sound of galloping hooves or a war cry that does not sound like a man's. She passes you, and now you are walking through a different place. The earth smells of sweat and horses. The air is stitched with tension. And something else. Awe. This is the camp, before battle. The firewood is low, the morale lower. But then she arrives. Tomo, Boudica, Lozen. You choose. They were all here, in their own way. Their armour is not polished, but their silence is sharp. You watch her check her blade, methodical, not for show. No one is watching, except you. Nearby, someone spits into the fire, someone else prays with their mouth closed. There is no speech, no rallying cry. That would be too masculine, too romantic. Instead, there is just readiness, which is louder. You glance to your side, another woman, younger, holding a bow, not confidently, but not like a beginner. Her hands shake, but her eyes do not. She nods to herself, once, twice, then stills. It is morning now, or almost. The mist hasn't yet made its decision. And then they move, a slow wave of bodies and breath and belief. You don't follow, you stay behind in the camp. You hear no screaming, no charge, just the wind pulling lightly at the edges of the empty tents. This was never a myth. You walk through the remains, not of people, of assumptions. Here's where they braided each other's hair with twine and tension. Here's where they sharpened blades and humour. Here's where someone whispered a song under their breath, not because they were brave, but because they were terrified and tired and needed to remember the sound of something soft. You reach a saddlebag, left behind, you open it. Inside, a piece of cloth stitched poorly, and a note, not written, just a mark, a symbol, a name maybe, or a warning. You put it back. The wind shifts, carries a scent you can't quite name. Blood maybe, or wildflowers, or both. Time drifts again, and now you're in a palace. But not the kind from fairy tales. This one smells of wax and duty. The ceilings are too high, the walls too clean, and the silence is suspicious. There is a woman here too, not in armour, in silk, but it cuts just as clean. She walks past guards who try not to look. She does not need permission. She has already taken it. She's a queen, or a general, or something more dangerous, a woman who has survived the council of men. Her hands are soft, but her eyes are sharpened by loss. You follow her through corridors lined with portraits. None of them are smiling. History rarely does. At the far end she stops, turns. You expect words, but she only raises one eyebrow. The kind no one plucked. The kind that means, I know you're listening. And then she's gone. The hall echoes with the footsteps of women you were never taught to remember. But here they are, all of them, walking quietly down marble or mud or sand, spear in hand or child or both. You sit on a cold bench and realise it was always like this. Power, worn like a second skin, not always visible, but always there, under the dirt, under the shame, under the names that never made it into the books. The wind outside howls through an arrow slit, the kind built to keep the world out. But sound gets in. You listen, and the past doesn't speak. It breathes, software and steady, like armour left on a hook, like a lullaby hummed without memory, like truth, unfolding very slowly. You're in a room now, not quite square, not quite warm. It's the kind of room that was never meant to impress, just to contain. A little too much stone, a little too little light. The kind of space where secrets are meant to be swallowed, not shared. You're sitting on a stool, your back aches slightly, not from age, from architecture. There's a man in the corner, old probably, or maybe just tired in places that don't show. He's grinding something, slowly, deliberately. It smells faintly metallic with a hint of regret. The pestle scrapes against the bowl in a rhythm that feels like time has forgotten how to rush. This is where beauty begins, not in salons, in cells. He's making face powder, white, luminous, lethal. You watch him stir in vinegar, then metal. Something flakes, something hisses. The room doesn't like it, neither do your lungs. Lead, again, white lead to be specific, the kind that coats like lies, smooth, persistent, deadly in installments. He scoops the mixture into a jar, seals it, looks up. You're not here for the recipe, you're here for the reason, because long before beauty was choice, it was obligation. You rise, carefully. Your legs have questions. Outside, the wind has teeth. It pulls at your cloak, already more suggestion than garment. You follow a narrow alley that smells like cabbage and unspoken thoughts. A cat darts past, unapologetically confident. You arrive at a house, not grand, but decorated with intent. Dried herbs hang like prayers. The door creaks in greeting. Inside, a woman is preparing her face, not for vanity, for survival. She dips her fingers into a bowl. The mixture is thick, pale. She applies it delicately, a second skin, a mask made of expectation. Then a touch of rouge, not too much, just enough to say, "I have not yet died of sorrow." She paints a vein, light blue, across her temple, as if to say, "See? My blood is still noble, still faint, still worth something." You don't speak, but she knows you're watching. She turns her head slightly, catching the light. Her expression does not change. It doesn't need to. There's an elegance in stillness, a resistance in ritual. The room grows colder, or quieter. It's hard to tell the difference. You step back out into the street. It's market day, which means chaos and sound and smells that fight each other for dominance. You walk slowly, carefully, past stalls selling cloth, spices, leeches, charms. A woman leans over a table of wigs, blondes, brunettes, something that might have once been red but is now more philosophical. She lifts one, places it on her head. She does not smile, but she nods, as if to say, "This is close enough to who I want to be today." Nearby, a child is rubbing soot on her lashes. Her mother pretends not to notice. Makeup, you see, was not always about beauty. Sometimes it was armour, sometimes camouflage, sometimes confession. You find yourself outside a chapel again, but this one is different. Smaller, cracked, and covered in ivy that seems both alive and deeply resentful. You push the door, it resists, then relents. Inside, candles flicker with the uncertainty of the devout. A statue watches you, female, saintly, smooth of skin, clean of brow, idealized. In this world, thin was good, but too thin was alarming. You wanted to look like you ate rose petals and whispered Latin, not like you had the plague. Again. There is no colour in her cheeks. She's alabaster, as God apparently intended. You sit in the pew. The wood groans beneath you, not from age, from familiarity. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and see them. Women in veils, layer upon layer, not for warmth, for virtue, hair wrapped, covered, hidden, because to show it would be to suggest something French. They move silently like weather. You can hear their thoughts if you're very quiet. They're not pious, they're practical. Will it rain? Will the bishop notice? Will this linen itch forever? Outside, bells toll again. Not for a wedding, not for a birth, for a burial. You rise, walk toward the sound. The street has grown hushed. A procession is passing, slow, steady, sincere. The woman in the casket was once beautiful, or so they say. You glance around. Everyone wears black, even the children, even the sky. But look closer and you'll see. Pale powders still linger. Rouge clings to cheekbones. A touch of lavender behind the ears. Even in mourning, beauty obeys. Because even death has rules, especially for women. You walk away now, toward nothing, toward the place where memory begins to blur. Your cloak flutters gently. The wind has softened. You pass a window, catch your reflection. It's not your face. Not exactly. But something familiar. Pale, software curious. You blink. And the past does not disappear. It just quiets. As if history too is getting ready for bed. You're walking now, slowly. Through a corridor of cold stone and colder expectations. The walls are damp, or maybe just old. They've seen things. They remember. Your steps echo, but not loudly. Just enough to remind you you're here. That time has decided to keep you. For a little while longer. You reach a door, wooden, warped. It sighs when you touch it, as if it has opened too many times for people with too many secrets. Inside is a room, sparse but curated. Every object here is both practical and quietly judgmental. A basin sits by the wall, water inside still, slightly cloudy, not with dirt, with history. You kneel, not to pray, to wash, but not everything, only your hands, your face, your reputation. Because this is a ritual, not a bath. Bathing, you see, is complicated, especially now. In this age, people don't wash because it feels good. They wash because it feels necessary, or political, or moral, or because someone important is visiting. Cleanliness isn't next to godliness. It's somewhere adjacent, with caveats. You dip your cloth in the basin. The water is cold, of course. Warmth is a luxury reserved for those who sin with less effort. You wipe your face, gently, as if erasing not just the dirt but the day. The cloth smells faintly of rosemary, and maybe vinegar, possibly both. You're not certain, and neither is the cloth. Behind you, a window lets in a breeze. It carries the scent of wet stone and dried thyme. Also something rotting, but politely. You dry your face on linen, it is stiff, everything is. Now you rise, and you enter the dressing room, but not the kind filled with gowns and choices. This room chooses for you. You see layers. Linen first, then wool, then something decorative and vaguely aspirational. Every piece has a function, and a warning. You dress slowly, not because it's difficult, but because it's ritual. Each tie, each fold, each fastening. This is not fashion, it's communication. I am not dangerous. I am not vain. I am not French. You leave the room. Down the hall is another chamber, brighter, warmer, slightly less humble. A noblewoman sits in front of a mirror, not glass, just polished metal. It reflects what it wants. She's applying scent, not perfume. That would be indulgent. This is a pomander, a small orb filled with herbs and hope. She lifts it to her face, breathes in, not deeply, just enough. It smells of cloves, maybe cinnamon, maybe anxiety. She doesn't look at you, but she knows you're there, watching, judging, wondering. Her hands are graceful, but rough, not from labour, from scrubbing. Because cleanliness is not ease, it is effort, and effort means morality. Outside, a cart passes, loud wheels, louder vegetables. She winces. You do too, not because of the noise, because of the reminder. Even beauty must face cabbage eventually. The room darkens. The sun has found better things to do. She stands, moves past you, leaves behind a faint trace of frankincense and mild disappointment. You follow, into a chapel, again. They're always waiting. You sit in a pew. This one is older. The wood has grooves from hands that prayed more often than yours. The sermon has begun. You can't hear the words, but you hear the tone. It is concerned, especially about women, especially about their hair, their eyes, their bodies. Apparently these are dangerous things, temptation wrapped in linen. You wonder who decided that, and why everyone keeps agreeing. Someone coughs, sharp, then ashamed. The candle nearest you flickers, like it's listening too. You close your eyes and drift, not to sleep, not yet, to memory. You see a girl, hair wrapped tightly, eyes lowered. She's walking to market. Her shoes are uneven, her basket light. Inside the basket is a comb, a sprig of lavender, and a ribbon she will never wear in public. She passes a mirror in a shop window, glances quickly, then looks away. Because she is not allowed to admire herself, but she does, quietly, as she should. The wind catches her veil, lifts it slightly. No one sees, but you do, and for a moment she's not history. She is just someone, trying, like all of us. You find yourself by the edge of a town square now, though square may be too generous a word. It is more a wonky patch of cobblestone, bowed in the middle like a place that has been thinking too much. The stones beneath your feet are slick with something. Maybe rain, maybe centuries of footsteps, maybe the residue of spilled soup and sins no one bothered to scrub. The sun is retreating behind the rooftops, spilling a tired amber light across wooden beams that lean just a bit too far into each other's business. There is a crowd gathering slowly, not with urgency, but with inevitability, like moths to something warm and unpleasant. You move with them, because there is nowhere else to go in this moment, and the quiet churn of curiosity moves your feet even when your mind has wandered off. At the centre of the gathering a wooden post waits, old, splintered, wearing the smell of smoke that was never quite forgiven. This is a punishment square, not a place for justice, a place for reminders. Here is where a woman might be displayed for stealing bread, or showing too much ankle, or speaking with too much certainty. Here is where a man might be whipped not for his crimes, but for embarrassing the wrong priest with a poorly timed joke about fish. The stocks are empty now, but the ghosts inside them are not. You feel them, warm and vaguely sour, like breath left too long in a room with no windows. Someone nearby is muttering a prayer, or a recipe. It's hard to tell. You smell tallow, and fear, and something that might once have been cheese, though no cheese should have that kind of confidence. The townspeople do not look angry, they look bored, which is worse, because this is not spectacle, it is routine. You hear footsteps behind you, light, deliberate, pacing, and then a voice, low and precise, begins reading aloud a list of charges. Public immodesty, excessive colour, disrespectful laughter. The list continues, absurd and monotonous, each accusation like a child's scribble scrawled across the margins of society. You do not see the accused, not yet, but already you pity them, because the punishment is not pain, it is presence, to be seen, judged, whispered about for weeks by people who can't spell, but can certainly remember how many buttons were undone. You step back not out of guilt, but out of a strange shared embarrassment, for all of them, for all of us. Because history does not whisper its cruelties with shame, it reads them loudly, with punctuation. You walk away slowly through an alleyway that hums with the scent of boiling onions and unresolved arguments. A child darts past you, holding something he shouldn't. You do not stop him, because he has already been stopped too many times by people who forget what it is to be young, and small, and tempted by movement. You pass a window. Inside, a woman is sewing in silence. Her stitches are too fast, too tight, the rhythm of someone repairing more than fabric. She does not look up. Her husband is nearby, asleep or pretending to be, drooling slightly into a pillow that has not been washed since the last monarch. The fire crackles once, then remembers it is tired. You keep moving through a lane where people are not walking but pausing, as if waiting for something that never quite arrives. You step past a doorway and catch a scent, cloves, wood smoke, and shame. The smell of a midwife's visit. Someone has given birth, or tried to. No one speaks of it, not because it is private, but because it is inconvenient. Life begins here in whispers and ends in silence. You turn the corner and see a man urinating against a wall with absolute confidence. He makes eye contact. You break it first, because that is the etiquette. You're not angry. This is simply how things are. A town where beauty is praised but punished, where joy is permitted only in measured doses, and where laughter must always end in the phrase, "May God forgive me." You arrive finally at a door. Plain. Thick. It opens before you touch it. Inside is a room filled with books, or what pass for books. Mostly pages sewn together by candlelight, filled with the thoughts of men who feared women, feared nature, feared pleasure, and turned that fear into footnotes. You sit at a desk, it wobbles, of course. You run your fingers over the parchment, feel the scratches, the ink that has dried into permanence. You open a volume and read the first sentence, "Let her be silent," and you close the book again, not from anger, but from a bone-deep tiredness that even history cannot explain. The candle beside you flickers once, then again. The shadows on the wall begin to move like stories that were never told the way they should have been. You rest your head against the wood. The desk creaks, a familiar lullaby. You exhale, slowly. The floor beneath you steadies. The wind outside forgets its urgency. And for the first time in a while, your body begins to believe that it is allowed to be still. You're no longer seated at the desk, though you don't remember standing. The room has shifted around you, gently, like a house breathing in its sleep. You're walking now down a corridor lined with tapestries that hang too low and smell like dust and pride. They depict scenes of heroism, of course, battles where no one sweated, banquets where no one burped, kings who were always just and queens who never blinked. You pass them without comment. They are not here for truth. They are here for decoration. The hall opens into a kitchen, though calling it that feels charitable. It is more a cave with ambition. A fire burns low in the hearth, sullen and resentful. Someone stirs a pot of something, soup probably, though the colour suggests a crime has occurred. The scent is warm but indecisive. Onion, meat, maybe cinnamon, maybe not. You move past the cook who does not notice you. He is too busy muttering about spoons and betrayal. A woman enters, her sleeves rolled high, her hair pinned with the efficiency of someone who no longer hopes to be admired. She carries a plate with 3 apples on it. None of them are the same size, which is precisely the point. She arranges them, then rearranges them. then leaves them alone because they will not obey. You step into the next room, a dining hall long and narrow with chairs that do not match and a table that was built by someone who disliked symmetry. At the far end, a man is sipping wine with the concentration of someone trying to forget what decade it is. He looks at you, not with interest, but with recognition, as if he's seen your type before, a watcher, a question left unanswered. You take a seat. The chair groans, not because you're heavy, because it remembers better days. A bowl is placed in front of you. Inside, broth, and something that once hoped to be a vegetable. You sip it and taste every decision that led to its creation. It is warm. That is enough. Around you, the hall fills with others, not people, presences, the lady with the bruised fingertips, the scribe who always smelled like ink and disappointment, the boy who stole fruit and never got caught because he always shared it afterward. No one speaks. They chew, they nod, they exist. You look to the walls where the paintings hang crooked, as if trying to escape their own subject matter. One depicts a noble woman with a forehead so large it might qualify for taxation. Another shows a knight mid-swoon, armour gleaming, expression blank. You finish your broth. The bowl is taken by a hand that doesn't belong to anyone you know. That's fine. You didn't want to thank them anyway. You rise. Your feet are heavier now, not with fatigue, but with absorption. History, after all, is a thick soup. It clings. You step outside into air that smells like frost and wood smoke, and something faintly holy. A procession is passing. Slow, deliberate, mostly silent. You do not know what it's for. No one ever does. You fall into step. The people ahead of you wear hoods, not to hide, but because faces have become too much. Someone begins a chant. It has no melody, only intention. The rhythm sinks into your bones. You walk past a wall covered in moss and pores. There's a name scratched into the stone, half erased by weather but stubborn. You run your finger over the letters. You do not say it aloud, not out of fear, out of respect. Behind you, a door opens. Laughter escapes, then quickly drowns. You walk on. The village is smaller than you remembered, or larger. Time here does not obey scale. You pass a window where a girl stares out, chin on hand, eyes on nothing. She's not waiting. She's waited too long for anything to be expected. You nod. She does not nod back, but something inside her shifts. That is enough. The sky begins to pale, or darken. It's difficult to say. Either way, your eyes begin to blur around the edges. The air has grown softer. The wind now carries stories instead of weather. You stop walking. There is a bench. It was not there a moment ago. You sit. The wood accepts you, not eagerly, but faithfully. And as the last sound of footsteps disappears into the distance, you close your eyes and feel the strange, full silence of a world that once was, still echoing softly in the folds of your breath. You're walking again, though your legs no longer feel entirely your own. They carry you gently, like a servant who has memorized your habits, down a path where moss grows in the cracks between the stones and every step feels like a question someone asked centuries ago and never really needed answered. The trees overhead lean inward, not for shade but for privacy, and the air smells of old bark, wet leaves, and something faintly medicinal, like a poultice applied to a wound the world forgot to name. You arrive at a gate, wrought iron, more decorative than effective, rusted in the corners, clinging to the memory of function. It opens with a sigh or a complaint, and inside you find a garden that has no interest in pleasing you. Nothing here is manicured. Everything grows the way tired people speak, crooked, slow, with unexpected elegance. You pass rows of herbs that once cured headaches and caused visions, depending on the dosage. Lavender leans against mint, while sage attempts to stand upright with limited success. At the centre of the garden is a stone bench, and beside it sits a woman with a mortar and pestle, grinding something into fine powder with the careful hands of someone who's been told her work is sacred, dangerous, and occasionally illegal. She does not greet you, but she does not ask you to leave. She knows what you are here to see. You watch as she spoons a portion of her mixture into a small tin, then seals it with wax and a prayer. This is her business. Making beauty from pain, making power from petals, making medicine out of what others fear. She used to be called a healer, then a witch, then something quieter. Now, no one calls her anything at all. They just knock 3 times and pay in silence. You look around and realise this garden has no borders. It just ends, slowly, the way a dream does. You step carefully between thyme and wormwood, passing a chicken who looks at you with the full weight of judgment and domestic apathy. Beyond the garden is a cottage, low roof, crooked chimney, a door that requires you to bow slightly as if in apology. Inside it is dim but not dark. The walls are lined with shelves, and the shelves are lined with bottles, and the bottles are filled with things that shimmer, clump, curdle, or hum. This is not a home. It is a library of forgotten intentions. You pick up a vial. The label is faded, but the smell is sharp. Something like nettle and memory. You put it back. The floor creaks behind you, but no one enters. You're alone with 1,000 unnamed remedies and 1,000 more unanswered questions. You sit on a stool that tilts slightly forward, as if encouraging secrets. On the table in front of you is a bowl of dried rose petals, not for scent, for bruises. Next to them, a bundle of yarrow, some crushed eggshells, and a scrap of paper with handwriting so careful it feels like it was written by someone who doesn't trust themselves. You read the note. It says, "Boil if desperate." You nod. That sounds about right. Outside, the wind has changed direction. It carries the sound of hooves, distant and determined, and the faint chime of something metal being dragged along stone. You do not hurry. Nothing in this place does. You walk back out through the garden. The woman is gone. The pestle is still warm. You pass through the gate, which now opens with no resistance. The trees seem taller now, or perhaps simply more awake. You follow the path until the moss turns to grass, and the grass turns to dirt, and the dirt turns into the idea of a road. Ahead is a village you do not know, but it knows you. It waits without expectation. You walk through the edge of it, where the poorest live, in huts that resemble badly folded bread dough, smoke rising from holes that were once chimneys, then ceilings, then both. Children play in the dust with sticks and bones, laughing at things that will not survive the year. A woman walks past with a basket of firewood and a look that could bend iron. You nod to her. She does not nod back, but she sees you. Everyone does. Here, where life is hard and laughter is earned, beauty takes on different shapes. Not smooth skin, but the way someone carries a sack of flour without stopping. Not glossy hair, but the shine of sweat on a face that has just returned from the fields. This too is power. This too is survival. You stop by a well and touch the edge. It is cool. Worn smooth by hands that never made it into poems. You lean over and look down. The water does not reflect your face, just the sky, wide, pale, and undecided. You close your eyes and feel the weight of time settle gently across your shoulders, like a shawl woven from every name history never bothered to write down. The night has come quietly, not with drama, but with certainty, blanketing the sky in that soft charcoal hue that makes stars look more like pinholes in paper than distant burning gods. You're walking now through a street that no longer tries to be a street. It is more a suggestion of one, narrow, misshapen, half swallowed by vines and puddles that don't reflect anything but themselves. The buildings on either side tilt toward you like they've been whispering about you behind your back and finally decided to let you in on it. You can hear the creak of shutters, the faint clatter of someone setting down a bowl, and the unmistakable scrape of someone drawing a knife, not for violence, just for dinner. It smells like barley stew and worn shoes. You pass a door where a couple sits in silence. Their hands don't touch, but their shadows do. They have been married for 27 years and have run out of things to say, but not out of reasons to remain seated beside each other. This is what love looks like here, not roses or ballads, but presence. You continue walking and come to a building that looks like it was once important. A town hall, maybe, or a granary. Now it's just a large room with a fire in the middle and benches arranged in a circle, as if waiting for a meeting that's been delayed for a century or two. You step inside. The warmth is subtle, the kind that wraps around your ankles first before daring to climb higher. On one of the benches, a woman sharpens a blade slowly, like she's making a decision. On another, a man carves something into wood. A bird, perhaps, or a fear. No one speaks. They all carry something. Not weapons, but weariness. You sit down on a bench that sighs beneath your weight and close your eyes for just a moment. A voice begins to speak. Not to you, but into the room, low and scratchy like it's made from parchment and sleep. The voice tells a story about a girl who rode into battle on a horse she stole, wearing her brother's armour and her mother's doubt, about how she wasn't supposed to survive and how she did anyway, about how the enemy never saw her coming because they were too busy looking for someone louder. The story drips into your bones. You don't know if it's true. It doesn't matter. You believe it because it feels older than fact and softer than legend. You open your eyes and the fire has burned lower. The woman has stopped sharpening. The man has stopped carving. They are both watching the flames now, not for warmth, but for memory. You leave quietly. The night outside has thickened. You walk past the apothecary where someone is grinding something bitter and essential. Past the bakery where a loaf has been forgotten in the oven but forgiven anyway. Past the inn where a window is cracked open just wide enough to let dreams in and regrets out. You find yourself in a courtyard with statues that have lost their faces, time having taken its toll where names once lived. You run your fingers over one of them. It is smooth, cold, familiar in a way you cannot explain. Someone once stood here, immortalized. And then, not. You sit on the edge of a fountain that hasn't worked in years. The water is shallow, stubborn, green. But the stone is strong. It holds your weight without question. You tilt your head to the sky. There are no birds tonight, just silence, layered like sediment. You take a breath, and realize it is the deepest one you've taken all day. You close your eyes again, and this time they do not open. Not because you are asleep, but because there is nothing left to see that will not wait until morning. The wind has slowed, the world has dimmed, and history, absurd, gentle, violent, and quiet, curls around your shoulders like the kind of blanket that still smells faintly of the person who handed it to you. You're walking through mist now, the kind that doesn't fall so much as rise, curling slowly around your ankles like an old cat deciding whether or not to trust you. The road beneath your feet is softer here, made not of stone but of compacted earth and stories trodden too many times to resist. Trees arch overhead, their branches laced together in a way that suggests either friendship or conspiracy, depending on your mood. The path leads to a structure ahead, round, squat, with walls of packed clay and a roof of thatch so old it sighs when the wind touches it. You duck to enter, not because the doorway is low, but because the room itself demands humility. Inside, the air is warm, thick with the scent of damp wood and something else. Maybe salt or grief or cinnamon. You're in a bathhouse, or what's left of one. A round pool sits in the centre, its surface fogged with steam, its edge ringed with stones polished smooth by countless feet. No one is bathing, but their presence lingers, a towel forgotten, a comb left in surrender, a robe hung like a question mark beside the door. This place was once about cleansing, not just of the body but of the weight the world tends to deposit along the spine. You kneel by the edge and dip your fingers in. The water is warm, reluctantly kind. You imagine someone sitting here centuries ago, their hair piled high, their face free of powder and lies, exhaling for the first time that day. Perhaps they were a queen, or perhaps no one at all. Either way, they mattered. The steam begins to rise more thickly now, curling in front of your face, obscuring everything except what you feel. The pulse of warmth against your skin, the slow melting of your jaw, your chest, your thoughts. You close your eyes, and when you open them again, the bathhouse is gone. Or maybe you just stepped outside without knowing it. You're in a field now, wide, empty, quiet. The kind of place where battles used to happen and then didn't. The grass sways gently, indifferent to what was once spilled here. You walk across it and your footsteps disappear behind you. That's the thing about fields. They don't remember names, only weight. In the distance, you see a structure, tall, thin, unapologetically vertical, a hennin, or rather a woman wearing one. Her cone-shaped hat rises like a tower of quiet defiance. A veil trails from the top, drifting behind her like a sigh that refuses to settle. She walks slowly, as if carrying an entire reputation on her head. You do not approach, you simply watch, because that is what the hat was for. Not modesty, not warmth, but spectacle. A symbol of wealth, of height, of balance. One wrong step, and the whole illusion topples. She disappears over a hill and you follow, but the hill is gone when you get there. Instead, there is a courtyard. Wide, marble, empty but echoing. At its centre, a man and woman stand facing each other, not in anger but in ceremony. He bows, she curtsies. They do not touch. Touching is for peasants. They are practicing etiquette, you realise. The medieval dance of posture and pretend. Every move a message, every gesture a gamble. The woman lowers her gaze just slightly, enough to seem chaste, not weak. The man straightens his back, enough to look confident, not arrogant. They are both exhausted. You step back, through a garden that smells of time and regret. Past a wall where vines have begun to climb despite being told not to. Past a statue of an angel with no face and very firm opinions about propriety. You stop at a door. It does not belong to anyone anymore, but it opens for you. Inside is a room you recognise. You've never seen it before, but you know it. There is a chair, a candle, a book, a small mirror that reflects the room exactly as it is, and somehow still lies. You sit. Not because you need rest, but because the moment has asked you to. Outside, someone sings, very softly, a lullaby in a language no longer spoken, to a child no longer alive, for a reason no longer remembered. The melody reaches through the cracks in the wall and wraps itself around your spine like a ribbon pulled gently by time. You close your eyes. The chair creaks. The candle flickers once. And history, strange, dusty, beautiful, and utterly absurd, folds you into itself, not with urgency, but with the long patience of everything that has ever lasted this long. You wake, if it can be called waking, in a place where nothing seems to move unless you're not looking. A great hall stretches before you, not in size, but in silence. The kind of room where people used to speak only when the walls allowed it. There are candles lining the perimeter, too many for light, just enough for shadow. Their flames don't flicker, they pulse, as if breathing in rhythm with your thoughts. At the far end of the room stands a throne, though it appears no one has dared sit on it in decades. The seat is cushioned in velvet, faded to the colour of dried roses, its corners gnawed slightly by time or mice or both. The arms of the chair are carved into lions, one proud, one bored. You step toward it, the sound of your feet swallowed immediately by the carpet beneath you, a long strip of woven ambition that has forgotten its purpose. To your right, a long table rests beneath a layer of dust that settles like snowfall. Plates still sit where hands once placed them with ceremony. A goblet is tipped just slightly, as though someone meant to return to it but never did. Above, a chandelier holds court, dangling crystals like frozen tears, reflecting a light that doesn't quite exist. You pass a tapestry depicting a banquet, kings and bishops smiling, servants frozen mid-bend, and a single woman off to the side, expression unreadable, hands beneath the table where secrets live. You keep walking. The air smells like parchment and ash, and something sweet that probably shouldn't be. To your left now, a corridor breaks away, lined with portraits. Their eyes do not follow you. They look through you, past you, into rooms that were sealed before you were born. A man in a high collar, a child with too many rings on her fingers, a queen whose smile is just wide enough to worry you. You do not pause. You know better. The corridor leads to a staircase. You descend. Slowly, carefully. Each step sighs beneath your weight. The walls grow damp. The light thins. At the bottom, a door. Wood, bound in iron, with a handle that feels colder than it should. You open it. Inside is a room with no windows and no walls, just the feeling of enclosure. You see shelves filled with scrolls curled tightly like sleeping animals, a table, a book, a single quill balanced on the edge, threatening to fall but never quite managing. You pick up the book. It opens easily, as if it has been waiting for you. The first page is blank, the second too. On the third, faint writing begins to emerge, like ink rising through the paper instead of being written on it. You can't read the words, but you know what they say, names, of people who did things no one remembers for reasons no one agreed with, and yet here they are, recorded, preserved, immortal in the most unhelpful way possible. You close the book, not in rejection, in understanding, You leave it there, on the table. The quill rolls slightly. You step back into the corridor and climb the stairs again, each step feeling heavier, not with effort but with inheritance. At the top, the hall has changed. It is not darker, but deeper somehow. The throne is gone. In its place, a single stool, plain and waiting. You sit. The air doesn't move, but you feel it shift. Like breath withheld, a voice, not your own, whispers in your ear. This is how it ends. And then softer. This is how it always begins. You do not answer. Not because you are afraid, but because you know now that the past never needed your permission. It only needed your presence. The candle flames lean slightly, like bowing monks. The shadows lengthen just a touch. You feel your pulse slow, your shoulders drop, your eyes begin to blur at the corners. You're still listening, even as the world starts to pull away from itself, fold after fold, like parchment returned to the drawer before it can reveal too much. And somewhere in the silence that follows, you almost hear it. A laugh, a prayer, the rustle of a skirt. Or maybe it was just the wind, remembering something it promised not to tell. You're drifting now, not walking, not floating, but something in between, as if the ground itself has grown soft and secretive, lifting you with each step, guiding you somewhere you were always meant to find. The air is different here, thick with silence, laced with the scent of old leather, damp wool, and something faintly metallic, like a blade that's forgotten how to be sharp. Before you stands a structure that isn't a church, not quite, but remembers being one. The stones are crooked, patched with moss in the shape of ancient blessings, and the doorway tilts slightly, as if the building bowed and then never stood up straight again. Inside, it is darker than it should be. Light filters through a high, circular window stained not with saints, but with symbols no one's worshipped in centuries. You step into the nave, and the echoes greet you before the silence has a chance to. Rows of wooden benches stretch out, each one polished by the slow devotion of weary bodies. At the far end, not an altar, but a platform, and on it, a woman stands. She wears a robe that might have once been white, now the colour of confession. Her hair is covered, her feet bare, her hands are raised, not in prayer, but in explanation. She is teaching. You don't understand the language, but her tone is unmistakable. Part plea, part command, part lullaby. You sit on one of the benches. It creaks, not rudely, but like an old friend who forgot you were coming. Around you, others sit. Their faces blurred, their breathing slow. Some of them wear armour, some wear rags. One man holds a dead bird in his lap like a memory he hasn't decided to bury. The woman continues. She is explaining how to read the stars, how to boil water for healing, how to leave without being seen. It is a lesson in survival disguised as devotion, a sacred ceremony where the only god is endurance. You glance upward. A crow sits in the rafters, watching with the resigned patience of someone who's heard this lecture before. Behind you, someone coughs, not the sick kind, the kind that says, "I'm still here." You nod, just once. You rise slowly, the bench sighing again, and step outside. The sky is neither day nor night. It is that pale in-between that stretches minutes into hours. You follow a narrow path through overgrown hedges and crushed lavender, the scent of which clings to your clothes like forgotten affection. Ahead is a small building, square, plain, honest, a workshop. You step inside and are greeted not by people but by tools, rows and rows of them hanging from nails like sleeping soldiers. Hammers, chisels, spindles, bone needles, each one with a story, none of them interested in telling it. A chair sits near the window. It is empty. The cushion is sunken, stained with oil and maybe a little blood. The table beside it holds a broken wheel, a cracked comb, and a half-carved figure that looks suspiciously like the man who once taught poetry to goats. You don't sit. You simply stand there, breathing in the scent of effort, sweat, wood dust, and silent resignation. This was a place of doing, of fixing, of making, not art, just use. And yet everything here is beautiful in the way old things often are without trying. You turn. The door has closed, not locked, just done. You step back outside and find the air thicker, the world dimmer. In the distance bells ring, slowly, one after the other, but not in time. They are not calling anyone, just reminding. You walk toward the sound, through a field of long grass and bent reeds, your hands brushing against stalks that have been growing here longer than memory. At the far edge, a figure kneels by a stone. You don't approach, but you watch. They place something on the ground, a flower, a coin, a button, it's hard to tell. Then they speak, very softly, as if speaking to someone who has already heard it all before. You stay there a while, not to eavesdrop, but to witness. Some moments ask only that you remain still. The wind stirs, carrying the scent of ash and barley, and a quiet settles over everything, not heavy but final. You take a step back, then another. The figure does not rise, the bells stop, and once again the only sound left is your breath, woven into the hum of a world that never truly sleeps. You find yourself in a room with no walls. Not that the walls are missing, but that they were never needed. The space exists by agreement alone, its borders drawn only in the mind. The ground is stone, uneven, cold, etched with shallow grooves from boots, hooves, and possibly the dragging of something heavy and uncooperative. The sky overhead swirls with a colour that might be blue or grey, or the inside of a seashell, depending on how much sleep you've had. Before you stands a table, long, wooden, unsteady at one leg, and reinforced with a brick that seems almost smug about its role in supporting centuries of indecision. On the table, food, or what remains of it. A wheel of cheese, collapsed slightly at the side. A loaf of bread, hard enough to pass as a weapon in less civil conversations. A bowl of stewed meat whose contents have congealed into a single, trembling shape that defies taxonomy. Flies hover politely, not out of greed, but nostalgia. Around the table sit 5 figures, not entirely human, or perhaps just very, very tired. One man wears a hat too small for his head and chews without swallowing. Another woman smiles at nothing and dips her spoon repeatedly into an empty bowl. The others argue, though not out loud, just through sighs, eye rolls, and very expressive eyebrows. No one looks up, no one invites you, but they leave a chair open. You sit because what else is there to do? The chair groans under your weight, or your presence, or simply the passage of time. Someone refills your cup, though it was never empty. The liquid tastes of apples and suspicion. You nod in thanks to no one in particular. Conversation hums at the edges of hearing. Gossip about a blacksmith's daughter who reads, a knight who wears perfume, a bishop who bleeds ink. All of it harmless, all of it true. Beneath the table a dog sleeps, possibly dreaming of a world where crumbs are plentiful and collars are optional. You reach down and touch its fur. It feels like everything you've ever lost and didn't want to find again. A bell rings somewhere far away. Not a call to prayer, a call to remembering. The figures at the table pause. One raises a fork, one raises an eyebrow, one disappears entirely. You blink and realise the table is now a desk. A scroll unfurls before you, written in a language that looks suspiciously like your own, just worse. The ink moves as you watch, adjusting itself into words you almost understand. Taxes, decrees, punishments, expectations. You look for your name, you don't find it. But your shadow does. It leans across the parchment and underlines something that makes your stomach shift. Not in fear, but recognition. You stand up, though your legs resist. The desk is gone. The sky has dimmed again. You're back in a corridor, though it's unclear if you ever left. Torches line the walls now, burning with a fire that doesn't warm but simply warns. A painting on the wall catches your eye. A woman in armour, one hand on her sword, the other on her hip, looking directly at you as if you've been caught doing something mildly disappointing. Her expression does not change. You nod. She does not nod back. You continue walking, past windows that show no outside, past doors that lead to each other, past a mirror that does not reflect you, but someone who remembers being you. At the end of the hall is a staircase that curves downward, not sharply but hesitantly, like it's reconsidering its purpose. You descend. The air grows warmer, softer, full of whispers not meant for words. When you reach the bottom, you are in a cellar, or a chamber, or a memory. Barrels line the walls, sealed with wax and wishful thinking. A single lantern hangs from a hook in the ceiling, swaying slightly. Not from breeze, but from breath. There is a bench here, short and wide, with a cushion that seems to have been sat on only by people who meant it. You sit. The floor is cool beneath your feet. You take a long breath, the kind that finds your ribs and lingers there. Around you, the world does not move. It waits, kindly, patiently, as if knowing that even the most restless soul eventually learns how to rest. You're not walking anymore, but being carried, not by hands or wheels, but by the quiet agreement of everything around you. The stones beneath you shift subtly to cradle your steps. The walls lean in not to trap, but to guide. You pass beneath an archway shaped like a sigh, and ahead of you stretches a corridor of woven shadow. The light here is thin and golden, like soup made from memory. On either side, shelves rise up, impossibly tall, impossibly old, filled with things not meant to last this long. Scrolls tied with frayed ribbons, books with no titles, their pages feathered by the breath of time. Vials of powders, some glowing faintly, others sulking in dust. There's a smell, something between ink, moss, and the underside of a regret. You pause at one of the shelves and pull down a book that hums softly in your hands, as if remembering a song you never taught it. You open to a page with a sketch of a face that looks almost exactly like yours, but older, or younger, or just slightly more certain. Below it, a list of rules. Not laws, not commandments, just rules. Always leave through the door you didn't enter from. Eat with your left hand in cities, your right hand in forests. Don't trust anyone who doesn't blink. You close the book, not because it frightens you, but because it doesn't. A small chair waits nearby. It's the kind that expects nothing from you but your weight. You sit. Somewhere far away you hear the faint clatter of armor being removed, a sound both victorious and vulnerable. You imagine a soldier, long after battle, taking off each piece not to rest, but to remember where they end and their own skin begins. Across the corridor, a woman in robes moves slowly along the shelf, her fingers brushing over objects with the care of someone choosing which memories to allow back into the world. She doesn't look at you. She doesn't need to. Her presence is permission enough. The silence between you is not awkward, but sacred. She pauses in front of a jar sealed with wax and whispers something to it. The wax shivers. The jar remains closed. You rise gently so as not to disturb the dust that has begun to settle on your shoulders like approval. Deeper still the corridor winds, until at last it opens into a courtyard that has forgotten how to be seen. The sky above is now a dusky silver, the kind that belongs to neither night nor morning, but only to in-between things. At the centre of the courtyard stands a fountain, its basin dry, its spout shaped like a lion mid-yawn. Around it, a circle of benches, each one different, one of stone, one of wood, one of woven reeds. You choose none. You sit on the ground. The stones beneath you are warm, as if recently kissed by sun, though the air is cold. You close your eyes. When you open them, children are playing nearby, though you didn't hear them arrive. They chase each other with sticks, wearing tunics too large and shoes too small, shouting rules to a game whose logic was never meant to last beyond childhood. One of them trips, falls, laughs. Another picks up a feather and declares it cursed. They vanish into a corner you hadn't noticed. You rise slowly and walk past where they were, the echo of their joy lingering in your knees. There's a gate ahead, made of iron vines, and locked not with a key but with intention. You press your palm against it. It sighs and opens. You step through into a garden that no one has tended in years, but which continues to bloom out of stubbornness. Roses lean against wild sage. Lavender argues softly with thistles. There is a bench beneath a tree whose roots surface like secrets too large to stay buried. You sit, again. You've been sitting often now, because time here doesn't demand movement, only presence. A breeze stirs the leaves, and one falls into your lap. It is shaped like a question mark. You do not answer it. You simply close your eyes and let it rest there. A small, rustling reminder that not everything lost was meant to be found. You're somewhere colder now, but not unkindly so. The sort of cold that doesn't bite, just insists. The kind that lingers in your sleeves, wraps itself around your ankles and waits for you to notice it. You're inside what might be a kitchen, though nothing is cooking. The air is thick with the ghost of soup. Lentils, perhaps, or cabbage, or whatever was cheapest that day. Hanging from the beams above are bundles of dried herbs, tied with thread faded from colour and memory. They sway just slightly, as if agreeing on some long-forgotten argument. Before you, a hearth. The fire inside it has burned down to a whisper, its coals curled like the sleeping eyelids of something once proud. There's a pot nearby, blackened at the bottom, full of something too thick to pour and too precious to waste. The table is uneven, scarred with knife marks and patience. Bowls sit at each place, some chipped, some lopsided, none matching. A loaf of bread rests in the centre, torn rather than sliced, an act of sharing disguised as necessity. A wooden spoon has been chewed at the end, not by animals, by time, or worry. You take a seat at the table, and though no one is there, you feel eyes upon you. Not watching exactly, just remembering. You break off a piece of the bread. It tastes like effort and dust, but also the faintest sweetness, like someone used a little too much hope in the dough. On the wall, a shelf holds jars of pickled things, onions, beets, even eggs. One of them contains something unidentifiable, floating gently, like an idea someone gave up trying to explain. You don't open it. Some things are better left mysterious. Outside, snow begins to fall, though you didn't notice it start. It doesn't pile up, it just drifts, a suggestion rather than a season. You rise, your chair scraping softly against the stone floor, and move toward a narrow doorway that leads somewhere warmer in story, colder in fact. A storage room. The air here smells of straw and secrets. Barrels line the walls. Some are marked with chalk. Others have simply been accepted for what they are. A cat sleeps atop one, its ears twitching at things you cannot hear. You do not pet it. You wouldn't dare. In the corner, a pile of old boots, all left-footed, none the same size. You wonder what happened to the others. You leave before the question settles. Back in the kitchen, the light has changed. A little softer, a little more gold. The fire flutters again, as if pretending not to be tired. On the far wall hangs a tapestry, its colours faded, its threads loose, but its message unmistakable. A banquet scene, rich and full, where everyone is laughing and no one is looking at their hands. You stare at it a long while until the scene begins to move. Not the people, but the feeling of them. The echo of music, the scent of roasted meat, the rustle of skirts and too many rings. You close your eyes. When you open them, the tapestry is gone. In its place, a small window. Through it, you see a courtyard where someone is sweeping with great care and absolutely no urgency. They are humming a tune you almost know, the kind that lives in lullabies and half-remembered promises. You step back from the window and take one last look around the kitchen. Everything here matters, but nothing here pretends. It simply exists, earnest, used, loved perhaps, or at least useful. And as you leave the room, the air feels warmer. Not because the fire grew, but because you stayed long enough for the past to recognize you as its own. You're walking through a hallway that no longer bothers to pretend it leads anywhere important. The floorboards creak beneath your feet, not in protest, but in slow applause for your persistence. The walls are covered in faded frescoes, scenes of saints and sinners, their halos chipped, their eyes too large, their gestures both sacred and slightly dramatic. You pass one where a man touches his chest in eternal agony, though the reason seems vague, possibly indigestion, possibly love. A woman beside him holds a scroll that says something in Latin, or maybe it just looks like Latin. It doesn't matter. No one reads walls anymore. The air smells faintly of beeswax and something floral that might be coming from the past. You reach a tall arched door with a handle shaped like a serpent swallowing its own tail. You hesitate, not from fear, but from respect. Then you push it open and step inside a room made entirely of mirrors. Not the shiny, flattering kind, but the kind that remember you, that recall every version of your face that ever flinched, doubted, or dreamed. They're cracked in places, fogged in others. None are whole, and somehow that makes them truer. You walk slowly. Your reflection stutters beside you, like an echo learning to dance. One mirror shows you as a child, dirt on your chin, wonder in your eyes. Another shows you old, wise perhaps, but mostly just tired in a noble way. One mirror doesn't show you at all. You stand in front of it for a long moment, letting the emptiness be enough. Then you move on. In the centre of the room is a pedestal. On it rests a comb carved from bone, worn at the teeth. You pick it up. It's warm, as if it had just been used. You run your fingers along its edge and feel not grooming, but ritual. A daily act of control in a world that rarely allows any. You place it back gently. Around you, the mirrors seem to soften, as though approving of your decision to leave things untouched. You exit the room, and the door closes behind you with a sound like silk being folded. Ahead is a staircase, wide and shallow, built for ceremonial descent. You take it slowly, each step a quiet surrender. At the bottom is a courtyard bathed in moonlight. Statues line the perimeter, not heroes, but people. Ordinary ones, a midwife, a baker, a woman holding a broken lute. Their faces are serene, or at least exhausted. You walk between them, feeling their gazes pass through you like wind through grass. A fountain bubbles softly at the centre, the water dark and still. You dip your fingers in, expecting cold, but finding warmth. Not heat, just comfort. You sit at the fountain's edge. A petal floats by, too intact for this time of year. You watch it spin gently, making slow decisions. In the distance an owl calls, then silence returns, more loyal than ever. You look up. The sky is clear. Stars press down like thoughts someone forgot to finish. You lie back on the stone, rough but real, and feel it hold you without question. You stare at the stars until your eyes stop understanding them, until they become just points in a story no one tells anymore. And in that quiet, something inside you exhales, not loudly, not finally, but truthfully, as if to say, yes, this is enough. You're moving through a place that once knew music, not the kind written down and performed, but the kind that happened when no one was trying. A bowl clinked against a table, a stool scraped the stone, someone hummed without realizing it, all of it music. Now it's quiet, but the memory lingers in the air like steam from a meal no longer hot. You find yourself in a room that may have been a classroom, or a chapel, or something between. The benches are narrow and bowed from years of leaning. The windows are high, stained not with pictures but with age, streaks of yellow and blue that look like light trying to remember how to be beautiful. At the far end of the room stands a lectern. It leans slightly, as if tired of explaining things no one wanted to learn. A book rests on it, open to a page that sags gently in the middle, as though even the paper is weary. You walk past the benches, past the ghost of a chalkboard, past the invisible outlines where candles once left soot on the walls. A single feather lies on the floor, not dropped, placed. You pick it up and feel the weightlessness of something that used to belong to flight. The book on the lectern is written in a hand that loops and bends like vines. Elegant, excessive, unreadable. You run your fingers across the page. The ink does not smudge, it never did. You close the book, not out of disrespect, out of understanding. Behind you a draught creeps under the door, carrying with it the scent of burned sugar and wet stone. You follow it. The hallway beyond is narrow, lit by a single candle in a niche, its flames small but determined. Your shadow stretches beside you, elongated and unfamiliar. You reach a door made of oak, blackened with time, carved with initials no one claims anymore. You push it open. Inside, the world has changed again. It is a bedroom, or a cell, or both. The bed is small, the sheets neatly folded, the pillow indented in the middle like someone laid down centuries ago and hasn't gotten up yet. Beside it, a stool holds a comb, a coin, and a wilted flower. You touch none of them. These were someone's last choices. A mirror hangs crooked above a cracked basin. Your face in it is too soft, too distant, as if even your reflection has begun to drift. You sit on the edge of the bed. The mattress gives slightly, grateful to be remembered. Outside the tiny window, night has fully arrived. Not sudden, but inevitable. A dog barks in the distance, once, maybe twice, then is gone. You lie back slowly, letting your weight sink into the stories pressed into the fabric. The ceiling above is wooden, beams stained dark with thought. You trace them with your eyes, following a path that leads nowhere in particular. A moth flutters in the corner, lost but not afraid. You envy it for a moment. You close your eyes. The room does not vanish. It waits. Around you, the silence grows thick and forgiving. It doesn't ask you to remember, it only asks you to stay. You're not waking, but neither are you fully asleep. You exist in that soft space where thought turns gentle and memories forget to wear names. You're in a garden, or perhaps it was once a courtyard, but now it is overgrown in the most forgiving way. Vines curl around broken columns like old friends clinging to each other out of habit. Moss spills across every surface, thick and velvety, softening even the hardest stones. The air is green here, not in colour, but in feeling. You walk slowly, your steps muffled by fallen petals and damp soil, the smell of which rises up to greet you like a lullaby hummed through earth. Nearby, a statue leans slightly forward, its face weathered down to the suggestion of concern. One hand reaches out, the other clutches a book so eroded it might as well be a brick. You pass by it respectfully, as one does when confronted by someone who has seen far too much to explain. Ahead, a fountain murmurs, its water trickling so quietly that you wonder if it's speaking or sleeping. A bird lands at its edge and dips its beak, then vanishes without sound. You sit on the low wall encircling the fountain. The stone is cold, but politely so, like a grandmother who disapproves but loves you anyway. You look down into the water. Your reflection looks back, softened by ripples, stretched by time. It blinks slowly, or maybe that was you. Beneath the surface, leaves drift like forgotten thoughts. A single coin lies at the bottom, tarnished and off-centre. Not a wish, a memory that needed somewhere to go. You stay there for a while, not because you are waiting for anything, but because the garden does not mind your silence. Across from you, someone has left a bundle of dried flowers bound with red thread, a gift for no one in particular, or for everyone. A breeze wanders through the hedges, carrying with it a whisper of lavender, smoke, and something like salt. You follow it around a corner, past a crumbling wall, where ivy has etched maps that lead only to the past. There's a bench here sagging in the middle. You sit. Again. You're doing that more often now, not out of fatigue, but out of respect for places that remember being sat in. Above you, the sky has turned the colour of old silver. Clouds move like thoughts on the verge of being forgotten. A cat appears, steps onto the bench beside you, and settles without asking. It does not purr. It simply exists with you, sharing the moment the way ancient things do, without needing to explain themselves. You close your eyes for a moment. When you open them, the garden is smaller. Or perhaps you've grown. Or perhaps the world has folded itself slightly inward to keep you closer. You rise and walk once more, past thorny bushes that once bloomed defiantly, now holding their bareness with quiet pride. A single bell chimes in the distance, not a warning, not a call, just a sound, a reminder that the past is never truly quiet. It just speaks more slowly. You pause beneath an archway where vines have grown together, sealing it shut. You press your hand to the green. It gives slightly, not opening, but acknowledging you. That's enough. You step back, and the garden exhales. It doesn't vanish. It simply allows you to leave. You're somewhere between yesterday and a story someone once meant to finish. The air is heavy with the scent of parchment, candle smoke, and something metallic. Not blood, not rust, but the idea of them. You walk into a small chamber lit only by the flickering of a single oil lamp, its flame dancing like a tired memory. The walls are close enough that your breath becomes part of the room's rhythm. There are shelves here, low and uneven, filled with scrolls, broken quills, wooden boxes with locks long since forgotten. A single tapestry covers the far wall, faded red, embroidered with a woman whose face is all softness and warning. Her eyes do not follow you, they wait. You step further in, and the floor sighs under your feet. A chair sits by the hearth, unlit, cold. Draped over it is a shawl woven with careful fingers and a great deal of time. It smells faintly of lavender and someone's long-ago laughter. You do not sit. Instead, you walk to the corner, where a chest rests beneath a cloth. You lift it, slowly. The chest is not locked, because it knows you will not take what's inside. You open it anyway. Letters, dozens of them, some sealed, some folded and frayed, none addressed. You take one. The handwriting is sharp, slanted, tired. It says only, We were happy here, even if we didn't know it. You place it back and close the lid. Outside the room, somewhere far off, you hear a cart pass over cobblestones, the sound echoing like bones in a dream. You walk back to the door, but it no longer looks like a door. It's smaller, worn at the edges. You duck slightly as you pass through, and suddenly you're in a corridor where the walls lean in just a bit too much. There are portraits here, crooked and solemn. Men in robes, women in armour, children who seem to be listening. Each painted face stares into the middle distance, unsure whether to speak or sleep. One has your eyes, another has your doubt. A third looks exactly like someone you used to be. You move past them, and the corridor curves downward like a thought that's changed its mind. A breeze stirs. You follow it until it leads you into a chapel so small it feels like it was built just for this moment. No altar, no benches, just 4 stone walls and a single stained glass window. Cracked, yes, but beautiful. It shows a knight kneeling, not in battle, not in prayer, but in apology. The colours flicker as the moonlight finds them. You kneel, not because you should, but because the floor asks gently. You place your hands on your knees and for a moment you forget what you came here for. But it doesn't matter. The room remembers for you. You close your eyes and breathe in the silence, thick as velvet, kind as time. The window glows, the night remains still, and somewhere outside the past turns over in its sleep. You are still now. Not stopped, just placed. Like a forgotten heirloom set gently on a table that no longer remembers its name. The world around you has grown hushed, not empty, but careful, a room that waits. The walls no longer press or echo. They exhale like lungs that have held something too long. You lie down on a surface that does not ask what you're made of, soft or sharp or sorrowed. It welcomes you regardless. The ceiling above is not wood, not stone, not sky. It is texture without shape, like the inside of a dream before it's been told. There are sounds, very faint. Cloth rustling, a drop of water falling into an unseen basin, footsteps that never quite reach the door. You think perhaps this was once a place of preparation, for death, for healing, for something in between. But the tools are gone, the prayers forgotten, and all that remains is quiet purpose. A candle flickers nearby, its wax long since surrendered. The flame is steady, even tiredness has rhythm. You breathe. Not because you must, but because the room allows it. Someone was here before you, someone will come after. But for now the space is yours, entirely and kindly yours. A book lies open beside you. You didn't open it. It was waiting this way, on a passage halfway through a sentence. It speaks of stars, of ships long sunk, of promises whispered into glass. You cannot read the words clearly anymore. The lines blur like tears too old to fall. But you don't need to know the story. You are the story, the kind that isn't told, only felt. Time is soft now. It has folded itself around you like a shawl pulled from a cedar chest. The air has weight, but not burden. A bird calls once, then silence retakes the world. You close your eyes, and there is no ceremony, no farewell, only the slow slipping away of the room, the sound, even yourself. You drift, not down, not away, but inward, into something older than thought, gentler than sleep. You do not need to return, not now. The mirrors have forgotten your shape. The garden has sealed behind you. The scrolls are quiet. All is still. All is forgiven. And somewhere far, far beyond all of this, a candle finally flickers out and does not miss the light.